you obviously had some learning experiences from last year. You probably, I would assume, with it being your very first one, made some pretty big mistakes. Do you want to you want to share some of those mistakes with us?
Yeah. So think of it this way. You take a guy who's never run a large event before and then have him run an event right out of lockdown and probably the biggest real estate event that is in the country. I screwed up so much,
right?
So much. What I did do right. Well, let's start with what I did right, and then I'll go through everything I did wrong because there's a lot more of that.
All right, Seth Ferguson, how are you doing today, brother? Thanks for being here.
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Listen, man, you've done some big things over the years. You're a real estate investor. You've put on this amazing conference last year for the MultiFamily Conference, and you're doing one again this year. And I want to kind of dive into that and why did you go down this crazy route of putting on this mega conference? So let's kind of talk about that because it seems pretty interesting.
Yeah, my fiance was not happy when I did it the second time around. So it's
so this is your second time now, right? Your first time was last year.
Yeah. It was quite interesting, and I guess where it all came from, funny enough, was the lockdown had just hit with COVID, and I was at her condo. Like, she was my girlfriend at the time, and we were watching Shark Tank on TV, and outside, like, no cars on the street, like it was deserted. The lockdown had just hit. We're watching Shark Tank, and I turned to her and I said, you know what? I'm going to have Kevin O'Leary speak at a real estate conference. And she's like, yeah, okay, whatever. And just gave me a funny look. And like 3 days later, I had Kevin O'Leary secured, and we started building this conference. So it really came out of nowhere. But it was like, I had always found for my own like real estate kind of journey and learning, I always found that the Canadian marketplace didn't have an event talking about apartments. Like it's like in the US, I feel it's a lot more celebrated, like success. It's easier to find successful people. There's a lot more events, education out there. In Canada, it didn't really exist. And, going to other real estate events, I always was like very bored. Like, your typical hotel ballroom with a bunch of round tables. You got somebody up there talking with a PowerPoint, and you got 2 PowerPoint screens. I hated events like that, but that was basically what everybody was doing in Canada.
Right.
So when I decided that, hey, I'm going to have Kevin O'Leary speak at a real estate event, I'm like, you know what? We're going to turn this into something that I'd actually want to show up for.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we did.
That's awesome. Because I mean, you know what? It really put you and your name on front stage. Yeah. I'd never heard of you before until all of a sudden last year. I'm like, who's Seth Ferguson? And I'm sure you probably got a lot of that last year, right? And then so what was that like, even getting in touch with Trudeau?
Oh, well,
not Trudeau. Sorry, Kevin O'Leary.
Yeah, Kevin O'Leary. Yeah, we might have half your audience happy, half your audience not happy if we say Trudeau.
Wrong guy.
Yeah. No, with Kevin, like Kevin was great to work with. He was awesome. His team was great. It was awesome. But it was interesting because the COVID lockdown was going on. So everybody was kind of hesitant about what was going to happen. The feeling was I was okay because the event was later, but in the US it would have been fine. But we were still in Canada. We were still locked down. I think it was less than 60 days before the event, which was insane. My friends were running events in Dallas and they were normal and we were still locked down here. So very different approaches in terms of what people were doing. And it was pretty scary. But yeah, that was a bit of a tangent. But working with Kevin was great. Very professional, really nice guy. Like it was awesome.
Yeah, awesome. So this year now, you've got some bigger names, and I want to talk about that. But before we do, you obviously had some learning experiences from last year. You probably, I would assume, with it being your very first one, made some pretty big mistakes. Do you want to share some of those mistakes with us?
Yeah. So think of it this way. You take a guy who's never run a large event before and then have him run an event right out of lockdown and probably the biggest real estate event that is in the country. I screwed up so much,
Right.
so much. What I did do right. Well, let's start with what I did right, and then I'll go through everything
Yeah.
I did wrong because there's
Okay.
a lot more of that. What I did do right was number one, I got a speaker that had good visibility, who was able to speak intelligently about the topic. So that was Kevin, and he made people have a reaction. Either you love Kevin or you hate Kevin. That was a great thing I did because he anchored the event. Once you have Kevin O'Leary, the event's real, and then other speakers get interested.
Right. And to add to that, was that an email? Was that a phone call? You obviously there's probably layers before you even get to him.
Yeah. It was all phone. But the thing is, like, I learned this with the podcast, and I'm sure you learned this. Well, I'll back up a little bit. And this kind of ties into the second thing. So the second thing I did right was I had a podcast first. I'd run a podcast. We did like 500 episodes or whatever. That got me in touch with other potential speakers, even though I had no idea at the time when I was doing the podcast. So filling in the speaker roster around Kevin was easy because I had already made these connections. That was great. Though with Kevin, I was like, okay, well, who do I know who could know somebody who knows somebody? And I remember with the podcast when I first started, when I was asking people if they'd want to come on, I'm like, there's no way they're going to come on. They have no idea who I am. I've only recorded like 3 episodes. You'd be surprised if you just pick up the phone and ask people how often they will say yes. And I'm not sure if you've experienced this with your podcast, but you just have to reach out. And the worst thing they can say is no. But generally speaking, most people will say yes. And I usually find the more successful somebody is, the more willing they are to be nice about it and share. It's just when the small people have egos, that's where you kind of butt heads with them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. And I think too, I think it's a good point because especially in the beginning, when you're starting that podcast, you're like, okay, well, I'm not big enough yet. There's no way this person that I've looked up to and is doing incredible things is going to agree to doing a podcast with me. And you know what? The opposite is so true. What you're saying is a lot of times they're like, no, because a lot of the times they know what it's like to begin and where to and how it's like when you first start. And they're like, yeah, look, I'll help you. I'm more than happy to share my story with you and help you grow your podcast or whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. I remember there's a guy, his name is Chris Gray, very successful real estate investor. He lives in Australia. And he's been running a show on Sky News for years. I always watched his show, even though I'm in Canada. I was a big fan of his. And when I started my podcast, I cold emailed him, being like, hey, listen, this is what I'm doing. Do you want to come on? And he said yes. And I think he was my second guest on the show. And it's like, oh, cool. Like I'm talking with this guy who I've watched for 4 years on his show. And now we're having a conversation. But if I was inside my head thinking, oh, there's no way he'd talk to me, I'm too small, I never would have made the ask and I never would have had that conversation. So yeah, everything kind of plays out that way.
Right. No, for sure. Okay. Yeah. So then, so you realized that the podcast that you were building was going to be a great platform now for you to actually reach out to some of these investors or previous guests to be some speakers at your show. That's one thing that you did right. What else did you do right?
Well, and then I would say the other thing I did right was I created an experience that was very different from what other people were doing. I shared about how much I hate typical real estate events. Like we had fire on the stage, we had the LED screens and everything. We made it a bit of a show, which I think was a breath of fresh air. I'm somewhere on the bookshelf is the Red Ocean, Blue Ocean book.
Great book. That's a great book.
Yeah. So I tried creating my own blue ocean in terms of the real estate education event space. And I think we've successfully done that. And, the number of very successful people who have wanted to buy into the conference is, I think, a testament to how much runway I think people think we have. And the value we're bringing. So we must be doing something right. If the people who are contacting me are expressing interest.
Yeah. And how many people did you have at that conference last year? And sorry?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah. And how many people are you expecting to have this year so far based on your on sales?
Yeah. So last year, coming out of COVID, we had over 1,000 investors there, which was great. We and selling tickets in like 45 days was insane, just insane, because everybody was holding off because everybody was scared about COVID. And as soon as the lockdown lifted, it was so hard because you had half the population being like, yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm done with this. And then the other half of the population was still very hesitant and gun shy. And it was a nightmare, but we got it done. This year, we're looking to at least 3x that. So, we've got a much bigger venue. We're right downtown at the Metro Toronto Convention Center. I rented out the CN Tower. We've got 160,000 square feet for the event. We haven't released the pictures for the AV setup, but it's pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean, I was checking out the website there, and I mean, yeah, you've got the CN Tower thing. Your guys are going to a club, I think, on Sunday
Rebel
at Rebel Nightclub. Yeah. You guys, listen, man, you guys are doing it big. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's my style, right? Like, and funny enough, we've got Grant Cardone coming this year in 2023, and one of Grant's biggest messages is you need to get attention. That's as a CEO, that's your number one job. You have to get attention for your business. And, I think about it, the safe way to do things would have been, okay, well, let's just get 500 investors together. We'll like do what everybody else is doing. That's safe. But that would not have achieved the success I was looking for, and nor would have made the splash and garnered the attention. When I went big with it, everybody, I have everybody's attention. I get emails literally every day from very good people who want to speak at the conference, whether it's next year or the year after. So I think there is a lot of truth into what Grant's saying in terms of like you have to get attention, and the only way you do that is making a splash.
Yeah, for sure. So why don't we talk about Grant Cardone? I mean, now for this conference and this event that you're doing, was that the first person now that you reached out to? I mean, you're trying to top Kevin O'Leary, and obviously depending on people's preference of who they like better than the other. But I mean, Grant Cardone is no easy person that you can just reach out to, pick up the phone and say, hey, Grant, I need you to do a conference for me.
Yeah, well, actually, Kevin was great last year. His talk he did was exceptional. I got so much great feedback from it. One of the things we did was we surveyed the audience and said, hey, who do you want to see? And Grant Cardone came back. Obviously, the MultiFamily Conference dealing with apartment buildings, that is Grant's bread and butter business with Cardone Capital. He's at over $4.5 million of $1 billion of apartments. So he's a natural fit. And the cool thing is, when we were talking, our conference was actually on their radar. They knew about us, which was pretty cool.
Really?
And they're like, yeah, we definitely want to come. Like, this is on our radar. Like, so it was pretty cool. That a very big player in the game, he and his team like knew about what we were doing. They were interested and they wanted to participate.
That's amazing. Yeah, good for you. Congrats. Now, what were some of those mistakes that you made last year, and how did you correct it going into this year?
Yeah, I would say the hardest thing, and the big mistakes I made was in terms of the marketing approach. Our tracking online was horrendous. We had no tracking. We were relying on the platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Google. We were relying on their tracking, which is very, very bad. And most of the time, you're 30% accurate with what they're tracking. So we had no idea, which ads were converting, which messages were converting. So we were basically marketing blind. And that was something we fixed right away for this year. So now we have a whole lot better handle on our numbers and everything there.
So let's dive a little deeper in that, because I think not only does it help what you're doing, but I think even for real estate investors and trying to grow their business and to get attention and eyeballs on them, what was it then that you did? Did you hire somebody to be able to properly track that? What did you do?
Yeah, well, it all comes down to, tracking platforms. at that point. Because what will happen is, to give you an example, let's say you run an Instagram ad and somebody becomes a lead and they click and they end up purchasing. In my experience last year, Meta did a very poor job at attributing the proper sale to the right ad. So, they may be showing you, oh yeah, this particular ad generated 10 sales this week. But in reality, maybe it only generated 3. And there was another ad that they weren't even attributing that sale to. It was very, very sloppy. Fortunately, there's solutions out there that track things a whole lot better. But that's important, right? Because if you have bad data or unreliable data, you're going to be making decisions that you think are correct, but they're not, because you're just looking at the wrong numbers. And it's very interesting to understand the customer journey and how they interact in your pipeline. We generally have a longer sales cycle. So if we were selling some e-commerce program, so like an ebook for $20, the sales cycle would be 1 day. And then you get people on the follow-up. But with us, what we're finding is people will hear about the conference. They will sit around in our database for 7 to 14 days. They mull things over, and then they purchase. So the issue, going back to tracking, is Meta will track for 7 days. But if somebody's sitting around for 14, then the tracking disappears. So that presented a challenge. And then the question is, okay, well, how do we actually move people down our pipeline if it's taking them 2 weeks to make a purchase decision? And then so basically, I ended up starting a whole phone sales team. So we've got quite the beast going in terms of the conference and the support staff and the structure. But now, we're actively on the phone with people because, if somebody's buying our VIP ticket, it's a high ticket sale. They need that voice to voice interaction, that sales process, rather than just a bunch of emails.
Got it.
So that was another mistake I made. I'm like, hey, we've got this great conference. People will just buy it because it sounds awesome. The challenge is we didn't have a first event. So people were just going on based on what I was saying. We didn't have pictures. We didn't have video. So people didn't see it. Like, if they see it, it's real. If you're just talking about it, it's not real. We had, we had the trolls on the internet saying everything's fake and it's a scam. So that was another thing. Oh, I get so many messages from people, especially with real estate. People just don't understand how real estate works. And, they've adopted mindsets where, real estate's wrong, providing people with housing is wrong. It's just, political ideologies. And so I get hate messages on a daily basis most of the time.
Right.
But yeah, so it was just, okay, well, so how do I move people through my pipeline? I've generated the leads. How can I convert them into actual ticket sales? And we've learned so much.
Yeah.
So
it sounded like you got like a tracking. So it sounded like there's 2 prongs there. One was you got like a tracking application or a platform from an automation standpoint. What was it that you got? And then it sounded like the second piece was now that when these clients or these people that click go into your CRM or your database, you now have somebody calling them and talking to them.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got a phone sales team on the sales side, and their job is to contact the leads that come in. We want to qualify them, see if it's a good fit, and then we can make the sale on the phone based on what they're looking for. Like, if somebody's a brand new beginner, we're going to offer them a different solution than to somebody who's got 5,000 units in their portfolio. We handle both of them in terms of the conference. We've got really cool stuff, but what we're selling on the phone is very different. So that's important. And then we also have a phone sales team on the sponsorship side. So very quickly, I realized that we were very small for the first year, but to hit our targets for 2023, we really needed to scale the team. And so we've got a lot of people on the team working on this. Yeah.
All right. So what are the mistakes that you make last year that you've corrected this year?
Oh, so many. So number one, I experimented with the phone sales team towards the end because I realized people weren't converting. But then I went with, I hired the wrong people. I was thinking, and this is a mistake I kicked myself for. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just like outsource it to some international callers because the cost is lower. Try and keep the budget low. Big mistake. So this year we've got like regular like Canadians like on the phone, like they live in the country, and we're able to have those conversations. And so I did a much better job with that. Obviously, we're paying them more, but the quality work is definitely there. So that was a great decision. Other things we fixed. Well, now in terms of like the marketing and everything, we've got like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of B-roll footage from last year's event. So we're really using that. On YouTube, we actually hired a company to help us with our YouTube ads because what we were doing before wasn't very good. So we're just getting expert video production involved there. So that's really helped. And I think also for pricing, putting on live events is very expensive. Like you don't make money at it. You don't make money running live events. So making sure that what you're doing, what you're providing, and getting the pricing right, that's really important as well. Because it's that's a tough, like pricing products is a challenge anywhere, especially when you're creating something. Because in the Canadian marketplace, everybody's used to, hey, I'm running this free workshop over the weekend, and then I sell you on a $50,000 coaching program. Well, we're going the opposite way. You're paying for a ticket, but you're getting you're getting a lot of quality product on the stage, and we're not trying to sell you into a $50,000 coaching program. So then
the question now is, so why do it?
Yeah, well, very good question. Number one, attention, right? The potential partnerships and the opportunities I've received from putting on this conference make it so worth it. So worth it. Now I have access to a wide range of people who are doing really cool things in the real estate space and outside the real estate space. And the number of opportunities people approach me with has significantly increased. So I went to doing cool stuff on my own, being very small. Like in the small real estate world, people knew who I was. But now in the general real estate world, people know who I am. And that's only going to keep growing.
Right.
So that is a huge reason.
And I was going to say, so when you say like these opportunities, is it now in regards to real estate investing? And one of the things why you first got into doing what you're doing, which is, you're kind of, your multifamily investing portfolio.
Yeah. And everybody, Russell Brunson said this in one of his books. I think it was .com Secrets. I can't remember, but everybody needs a platform, some kind of show, because that's your value that you're putting into the marketplace. I am valuable in the marketplace right now because I can provide people with an audience and a platform to do their thing.
Right.
That's my value. So, like we're working on a project right now that we're actually launching at the conference. And the people who we're able to attract to that project are very top-notch people. And I don't think that would be possible unless I had that platform. So, it's, do I make money running the conference? Not really. Will I at some point? Most likely. Like we're still a startup. Like we ran one event, like
right.
the second event, like we're still very early in it. And then I would say the very selfish reason why, I get to meet the speakers and chill out with them. And these are people who I want to know. Like I don't put people on the stage who I don't want to meet. So, right. With Grant, A-Rod, Kevin O'Leary, like I want to meet with these guys. So I bring them in and I got to hang out. That's the fun part.
So then, and I guess I'll ask this question here. So last year, and we don't have to get into the numbers, was it profit loss? And then this year, do you expect it to be a profit loss?
Yeah, I lost money last year on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And this year, 100%. And this year you expect to maybe lose money on it as well too. Mm-hmm. However, it sounds like the opportunity, or no, you think this year you'll make? No,
the goal is not to lose money this year. And quite honestly, like last year, if we were able to get over 1,000 people with COVID, in a normal year, we probably would have been double. like COVID screwed us, like the lockdown screwed us 100%. 100%.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting though about having this particular conversation about the profit or the loss is that I think what people may miss, and I hope that they get in this conversation, is that there's other opportunities that will come out of it. There are other things that's going to allow you to grow your business or to grow your portfolio because of the connection. You know, and there's one thing that I remember, especially in the beginning, is that, you know, your network is your net worth. And it sounds like that's essentially what you're saying, is you're creating this incredible network.
Yeah, that's what it is. And you know, I look at the conference not from a year by year or a 5-year plan. Like I'm thinking 10 years down the road.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. So, you know, our goal is to have the largest real estate investing event in North America. That's the goal. Like we want to have 10,000 people at the conference in 5 years.
Right.
So if like the profit loss year 1 and year 2, it's irrelevant. Because the opportunity that comes in the future years, that's the value for me of the conference. Now, for an attendee, it's, you know, for a very low cost, you get access to all these like superpowered brains in the space, and you meet a lot of people, the networking, all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's I guess it's it's the network, and it's also like the platform that's powerful.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, you know, I think this is something that's important as well, too, is that you got to remember, I think people forget this, is that when you start a business, any business, the first 5 years, it takes time to even build that business for it to be profitable. It's usually sometimes not even until the 5th year. Like I think back to some of the businesses that I've started in the past, and it takes time.
It does. And a whole lot of effort. Doing the real estate stuff is easy compared to running a conference. And I remember like Joe Fairless was one of our guests. Joe's a friend of mine, and he's over the $2 billion mark with his company. Like he's doing deals with Blackstone, like insane. And he was like, you know what, if you can pull this off, like there's nothing you can't do in the real estate space, because like running a conference is way harder. And he runs a conference in the US, like very different feel, but he's like, hey, if you can do this, like there's no reason why you can't do anything else. And it's very true. Like a real estate deal is so easy compared to running this conference. Yeah,
I can imagine. Right. It's not easy. I mean, I do events all the time, you know, and it's not an easy thing, you know, and the thing too is, here's a tricky thing, is that then when you do a successful event, and then you do the next one after, you think it's going to be sometimes even bigger. And I've had it too, where all of a sudden, like, oh my God, I got like 3 or 4 people show up. Like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But you know what, like, and that's a fear of every event organizer. Like, fortunately this year, like we're doing really well with ticket sales. So I think that's an indication that we're doing something right.
Right.
But it's like you have to hone in on, well, what are people actually looking for? And how do I convey that message? It's all the marketing side, the copywriting side. And I think generally in real estate, especially when we're talking more on the investing stuff, people are it can be very bland. And I don't think as investors, capital raisers, we put the time and effort we need to in terms of like creating compelling copy and really understanding the motivation and the drive. Like it's one thing to say, hey, come invest with me, like you want a good return, but that's not why they're actually investing with you. So going into what makes good copywriting? Like how can we actually convey the benefits instead of talking about the features? It's all basic copywriting stuff, but like we weren't very good, so we had to learn on the fly.
Yeah. How big is your team? Like how big, like from the people on the phones and the people that are doing like what you're talking about, like even like the copywriting and writing it and putting it all together, like how big is this?
Yeah, we've got like 10 people on the phones. And then we've got a whole like execution team. So Dwayne Rutherford is the guy who is putting all the pieces together. And then he's got people on his team. Because this is such a big event, like a couple people can't run it. So yeah, like we're probably 15 and 20 people on the team right now. Like working in various capacities. And then obviously we have contractors and all that stuff working. But yeah, it's basically, we've had people working full time on this event ever since the last one ended. It's just insane.
Yeah, that's incredible. What can people expect to get out of this event? So I get my ticket, I'm ready to rock and roll. I show up, and maybe I'm new to this. Like, what can I expect to get out of this?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you the two most common comments we got from people last year. The first comment was everybody was very surprised about the quality of the networking. So at some events you go and the other attendees, like, it's not a good fit. A lot of people commented that, yeah, like, there's actually really good people here that I want to meet. So the quality networking. The second thing was the no BS speaker lineup. Very consistently, people commented that, the people on the stage, it wasn't just a big pitch fest. Like, we were actually delivering very actionable and quality information to people about multifamily in a wide range of subjects. So basically, we covered everything to do with apartment investing. But to answer your question about a beginner, and this is something I learned last year, we attracted a good portion of people who maybe were doing single family home investing. They were interested in apartments. Maybe they were doing self-storage, interested in apartments. So multifamily investing is its own niche. So what we did this year was we're actually running a Friday workshop just for beginners. So the main conference takes place on the 27th and the 28th. On the 26th, we're running our beginner quick start boot camp. And it's myself and a number of other speakers, and we're basically covering the basics.
Right.
And so that way, when somebody is in the main event on the Saturday and Janet LePage is talking about how she raises $1 billion a year and places it in value add deals with her company, they'll actually understand and be able to get more out of what she's talking about because they've built that foundation on the Friday. So that's how we've adapted from last year, because last year, quite honestly, we had no idea what we were going to get because it was our first year.
Right. And is that just like feedback that you got from the people that attended the event? Like, did you guys do surveys to say,
oh, yeah.
how do we improve the event for next year?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate because after the conference, my phone literally blew up with people like sending messages. It was insane. Like, we got so much feedback from it, which was very helpful. But yeah, like, we send out surveys. We look at the demographics. Where are people coming from? How big are their portfolios right now? What are they investing in? What other assets do they have? We want to build a pretty good avatar of our attendee. Surveying, collecting data from people is very important, and we use that. And we saw last year we had a high number of beginners showing up or people new to multifamily. So it's okay. Well, how do we actually make this better for them?
Right.
So we ran the Friday workshop, and then we attracted a really cool list of people who were very experienced operators in the space. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in their portfolios. Sometimes, over $500 million, like a lot of money. So it's like, okay, well, we've got these beginners, we've got them looked after. How do we actually cater to the more experienced people? They're coming to network. So hence, I rented the CN Tower, and we're running a VIP only networking event in the CN Tower. Cool experience, cool venue, but also high quality people in the room. So if somebody's coming and they want to meet other movers and shakers in the space, that's where they're going. So it's all about understanding what people are looking for and then creating an event that will actually give them that.
Right.
So again, like, it's our second year. Like, we've got lots of cool ideas. We're not doing all of the neat ideas we came up with this year. We have to save some for next year. But yeah, like, the goal is to make this the best event in North America. So we're always looking to improve.
So after last year's event and moving into this year's event, who did you reach out to, or who did you sit down with and say, how do I make this better? Because you obviously realized that you made mistakes the first time. Did you just say, oh, well, I'll just self-correct? Or do you say, no, I need to sit down with somebody experienced in this space and learn from them?
Yeah, it was more self-correcting within our team. Debriefing right after the event was important because it's fresh in your mind. And actually, we saw this after the Falklands War. The British Army actually interviewed a whole bunch of officers who went and fought to capture exactly what the challenges were, what they dealt with, to capture that so they can save it. So we did the same thing. Like, we debriefed the whole team. What went well? What didn't go well? What would we do differently? Because if we waited like a month later, we'd forget a lot of stuff.
Right.
So debriefing was great. The thing with us is in the event space in Canada, there are not many people who run events like we do.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't exist.
I'm trying to think of who would do it as big as you do.
It doesn't exist in the country. The best thing to look at is we basically run a mini 10x growth con. So Grant Cardone runs his 10x growth con.
Yeah.
We run a mini version of that. That is the best comparison we found in terms of what we do.
Yeah. And I mean, look, when you say mini compared to the US, but don't forget the US has a larger population as well, too. So you're pretty much almost kind of running the same thing that Grant is in the US based on our population per capita, if you want to kind of take a look at it per capita.
Yeah. And that's another challenge of running events in Canada. We don't have the population.
Right.
And quite frankly, like last year we brought people in from every state except Alaska and every province. Yeah. So we drew people from all over, but the fact is the majority of Americans, they will not come to Canada for an event. Like we have a good portion of Americans who do come, but if we were in the US, we tap into a much greater market. So that's another question we have to ask ourselves in terms of thinking long-term about the event. So right. Yeah, lots of things to keep in mind.
Do you have time scheduled to sit down with Grant Cardone to pick his brain to saying, how do I grow it and get it even bigger and close to what you're doing in the US? I mean, that's what I would definitely do. I'd be like, Grant, I need at least 3-4 hours of your time.
No, well, I don't. Grant's a busy guy, so he's flying in and he's flying out. Parking his airplane. Like Alex is flying in on his plane, Grant's flying in on his plane, so we got to park them somewhere. But yeah, like the green room conversations are pretty cool because it's just me and the speaker, and we just hang out for a bit. My son made sure we had lots of candy in the room, so we just eat candy and have a good time. Yeah. But even working with Grant's team, they've been awesome. They've run 3 events in a single day before. So you look at the learning curve that we have. Like now we're actually working with a team and contact, and we talk with them about how they run things. So I'm actually really interested, not just talking to Grant, but also like his staff, because they're the ones who are actually executing on what they're doing. So yeah, we've got so much to learn. But it's kind of cool because other people have run events and now they're coming to us to ask questions and, hey, how can I improve this? So I think, that's another sign that we're doing things right, I think, and we're hitting the right chord. When, people are like, hey, like I'm running this event, like I'm struggling, like what would you do? It's neat.
Yeah. I mean, look, it could be a new coaching program you fire up, right?
Oh, no. No, my conference is more than enough. I don't want to get into other people's events.
Yeah. What's the game plan with it now? To do it once a year or a couple times a year?
I like annual. There was a company years ago who did like a traveling roadshow kind of thing where they hit all the major cities in Canada. It loses the special aspect and you can't put it on at the scale. So my goal is to create the event that everybody has to go to once a year. And you attract the speakers, like you get the crowd, the energy. If you go on the road show, you're not going to have the same speaker show up for the whole road show. It sucks to do. And it's not special at that point. Right. So we're an annual thing. We've got some ideas for the future, but right now we're once a year.
Yeah. What are your biggest fears for this conference that's coming up? I mean, listen, man, you must have some sleepless nights.
Oh, every night. Like this is like running this conference is the most stressful thing I've ever done. Like it is insane. And yeah, every event organizer, every person who puts on a conference, it's like, what happens if nobody shows up? Fortunately, people have bought tickets, but it's like, what happens if people don't like it? Like it's all the same stuff everybody thinks about. It doesn't change just because we're operating on a bigger scale. And then, the nature of events is, for whatever reason, everybody always waits until the very last minute to buy a ticket. You can offer early bird discounts. You can do whatever it is you need to do. But the fact is 50% of the audience will buy their ticket in the last 6 weeks. That's just human nature. So, we try, like every week now, our price goes up for the ticket to reward early action takers. But no matter what we do, people will still buy tickets. So obviously, from a event organizer perspective, you just have to understand this is the way it is. You can't, no matter what you do, people will still buy tickets at the last minute. So you have to plan for it.
Yeah, and that's a good point, and you're so true there, right? The other thing as well too is you probably, and I wonder what the percentage is at that level, is you will also get a percentage of people that buy tickets and just don't even show up.
Yeah, we do. And I actually spoke with some of my friends who run events in other spaces, and it boggles my mind. Mm-hmm. Like, people last year bought a VIP ticket, like our top tier ticket. This year, a VIP ticket's $5,000, and some people in VIP, not very many, but a handful, didn't show up. Yeah. It's like, really?
It's wild. Human nature is a wild and interesting thing. And it's like, it's averages and percentages and the 80-20 rule. It's an incredible thing.
Yeah, it boggles my mind. But and the thing is, like, I think the hardest thing for me to understand was most people don't think like I do. Mm-hmm. So if you're an entrepreneur, you're out there, you're a go-getter, the people you're selling to are not thinking like you. Their brains are not working the same way. So, just because I would do something and I find something attractive doesn't mean the majority of the population does. And that's why you have different parts of your sales copy, right? You've got the emotional pull, then you've got the exclusive pull, then you've got the fear pull, and you need all those components to sell to everybody. Right. So people are very funny. And the interesting thing is, we found, statistically speaking, that an American in our database will take action faster than a Canadian.
Really?
Very funny. And I found the same thing with raising money on both sides of the border. Canadians will always be slower than an American. Don't ask me why. I have my theories, but don't ask me why. But right. It's Canadians just move slower, generally speaking. So it is what it is.
Interesting. Is there a particular ad that you find that seems to be working better than some of your other ones? There must be ones where, and then what specifically in that ad? Is it emotional? Is it fear? Is it, like, which one do you find?
No, it's a lot simpler than that. The same thing happened last year. Last year, anything with Kevin O'Leary's face outperformed everything else. This year, anything with Grant Cardone's face outperforms everything else. It is what it is. Now, we do have some other ads. We're always testing different hooks and stuff like that. It's interesting. Some audiences, if we're talking on YouTube, some audiences will resonate more with a particular hook. Whether it's, hey, it's like largest networking event in the country. That resonates with one audience. Whereas another audience, it could totally bomb, and they're looking about investment solutions in the troubled market. So right. It's all about testing it. And that's one thing I've really learned this year is you have to be very methodical with it. You have to be very scientific. It's all about the numbers in the spreadsheets, and you can't have emotion. Even though you really like an ad, if the market's not picking up on it for that audience, you cut it. You have to be ruthless. And I'm still working on that because I'm like, oh no, it's going to turn around. No, be ruthless, cut it. It's not worth it. It's not working. So it's a really cool learning experience because we're spending a lot of money every day, a lot of money. So I've never run these ad budgets before. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. I guess it's, for some people, it's the fear of missing out. So the largest conference, oh my God, I got to go to the largest conference. And then I guess also too, with using the keynote speaker's face all the time, it's people are familiar with Grant, or people are familiar with Kevin O'Leary. So if he's going to be there, then I need to be there.
Yeah. You're really piggyback. It's like any real estate partnership. If you're just getting into real estate, you're going to partner with somebody who's got the track record, who has the reach and the connections. Same thing with our speaker selection, right? Number one, we want to get somebody who I want to talk to. And then we want to find somebody that is good in the space, who people will want to see, but we're really leveraging their network as well. Grant, I don't know where he's at right now. He's probably got 5 million Instagram followers. People know him. So as soon as we put his face on somewhere, he's instantly recognizable if you're in the real estate space or in the sales space. Kevin O'Leary, a household name through Shark Tank. Think of it this way: the MultiFamily Conference, network with real estate investors, or the MultiFamily Conference, Kevin O'Leary, like a lot more credibility and a lot more splash. So we definitely shamelessly use our top speakers as much as possible. Yeah.
Listen, you know what? This has been a very interesting conversation. I thought we were going to get into some real estate investing as well too, but the more questions I asked, the more intrigued I got, and we kind of went down, I think, a very interesting rabbit hole of behind the scenes of what you do, and I think it's intriguing, and I what I liked about it as well too is that it's not to say that if anybody's listening, you have to do it to the scale that you're doing it at. But I still think there are things that people can take away from this particular conversation that they can use in a smaller scale to grow their portfolio or to grow their business, or right. Because at the end of the day, it's about getting eyeballs on what it is that you're doing, whether it's you're building a business on whatever it may be. I think what will resonate with a lot of people that are listening to this.
Yeah, you need to get attention. And, if you're running a small event for investors and you're attracting 20 people, well, how do you make that different from what everybody else does?
Yes.
That's the key. How do you make it special? Because what happens is people just see whatever. It's like your typical real estate agent ad. They all look the same because everybody just copies what everybody else is doing. So How do you make it special? Whether it's 20 people, 200 people, 2,000 people, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I agree. Anything else we didn't touch on that you think people should know about on starting their own conference, or whether, a business or even on a smaller scale that you think it could help them?
Yeah. And I've learned this too. So I have a bunch of core values that I try and live by, and everything goes through those core values. And one of my top core value is boldness. I want to be bold. I want to do things that people are scared to do. And what happens is, because not many people will do that, you have people surrounding you, second guessing your vision, telling you you're being too risky, telling you, oh yeah, but think about it. What if it doesn't work out? So when you're starting your business, when you have a big goal that you want to accomplish, you basically have to take responsibility for dragging it across the finish line yourself, because you can't rely on other people to support. The people around you care about you, and in their minds, they're doing the right thing by expressing concern. Where I think the best thing that they can do is support you 100% and tell you can do it. So just be very careful about your headspace, and make sure that when you're embarking on that, make sure that you are mentally tough enough to tune out everything else, because 1,000,001 people told me my conference was going to fail last year, and we did the absolute opposite. So you can't listen to the noise. You have to be 100% focused.
Yeah, I like that. Right. Essentially, I think it's about, don't blame anybody else for where you are. Right. Because once you start playing that blame game, where does that stop? And I think you're right. This is your journey. You got to push through, and you surround yourself with the right people. They're there to complement you. But at the end of the day, this was your idea, your vision, your journey, and you're dragging that thing right across the finish line, no matter what.
Yeah, it's like, are you coming with me or not? Because I'm getting it done. So
I like it. Listen, Seth, I enjoyed this conversation. I enjoyed getting to know you better, because this is the first time we've actually met. But I mean, I've seen you online, and I'm impressed with what you're doing. And I think eventually we'll get a chance to meet each other in person. And I'm going to try my best to be there. Unfortunately, it's my wife's birthday that weekend, but we'll see. Maybe I can surprise her. Well, go ahead.
What a great birthday present. We can get you hooked up with the VIP dinner, everything, CN Tower. I can't think of a better way to celebrate a birthday.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll see if I could do that. It's her 50th birthday. So maybe I'll see if I could get her in with Grant Cardone and a few of the other phenomenal speakers there that weekend.
Yeah, so, that'll be fun.
Yeah. Seth, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, they want to learn more about the conference, getting tickets, how do they do that?
Yeah, conference is easy, multifamilyconference.ca. And if somebody wants to learn more about what I'm doing, we've got hundreds of videos on YouTube. Just go to youtube.com/Seth Ferguson. So much free content on there about real estate investing.
Awesome. Seth, Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And hopefully I will see you at the event this year.
Yeah, we'll see you there. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Thanks again.